Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I have two replays for you guys where I'll be playing the Mountain. I've recently kind of been struggling against all of the aggro openers. There's been a lot of Hound Saber going on at high MMR, and it's simply difficult to defend. And because I don't want to play a headbutt and the same packs every time, I keep trying to find, new comps to try out. And well, recently I've been trying out the Mountain, and that's what today's video is all about. I think it has a good matchup against, any of the mid-sized kind of aggressive units like Spider and especially Saber, and it's not even that bad against other mid-sized stuff like Hound and Sledgehammer and whatever you may find. So in these videos, you're kind of going to see me how I like to set it up and how it performs against different types of boards. The first one here is against Kono, who starts with a Spider and Fang opener, and of course he is going to play aggressive. Now, there's a bit of a gamble here on round one. I think typically, at least at the higher MMRs, people prefer not pushing into the magnetic barricade because it slows units down and it's kind of annoying to deal with. So usually they will be pushing into the other side where there is no barricade. This means that I do often like to stack my units because if I want to play defensive, that is just a lot easier early on. You will just have a stronger defense, of course, as opposed to being symmetrical. And here I thought it wasn't the worst either way. I do have steel balls, so I would have had some pressure on the left side either way, even if my opponent decides to go on that side. And if you're going to play Mountain, you're probably going to be selling some of these units anyway. So if they're on the wrong side of the board, it's not the end of the world. Now, I am going to buy Hounds here on round one. And this is kind of what I like to do with the Mountain. It's a very similar setup to what some of you may know as, the War Factory setup, with Hounds behind the towers and, of course, running Incendiary Bomb. I've recently put it back on because I think it's still quite good. It's very, very cheap, 200 resources only, and that means that pretty much any counter to it is going to cost the same. Missile Intercept Mustang costs the same, and the only thing that's cheaper, really, is, I think, Missile Intercept Sabertooth, which not all people are going to have access to. So yeah, that's kind of how I like to get through these early games, because I'm going to need a lot of resources saved up if I want to buy typically a Mountain on round 4. And I think Fire is just such a powerful effect when it comes out. It often just gets you round wins and allows you to save some hit points. And in fact, even without Fire here, I managed to win round number 1 thanks to my steel balls. Round number 2, unit reinforcements. Phoenix, I think here is just always the pickup. I already have Chaff Clear. I don't really need more DPS, and I don't have anything to shoot air units. So Phoenix is almost always a very solid pickup here. Marksman would be another that is nice to get. And yeah, I don't have to think too long about this. I think maybe I was thinking about like a Rhino attack on this side, but realistically, you should just pick the air unit. Kono here goes for a Void Eye, and because he's an aerial specialist, he buys the Phoenix himself. That way he saves himself some money because, the price of these packs is factored in as if you had to buy the unlock, and so it's a little bit worse for something like aerial specialist. We see a little bit of a change there. Kono deciding to go for a different play instead, does unlock the Phoenix, but buys another Spider instead and doesn't go for any dedicated anti-air apart from the Fangs he has. Now, granted, he has quite a few, but he's soon to find out that there's not going to be that many left, because on round 2, I can already buy Incendiary Bomb, and I can do this very reliably because of how cheap the tech is. If you start with 2 or 3 Hounds on round 1, round 2, you can very easily buy, one more, click it, and still have enough money to get 2 deployments down. So that's exactly what we do. A Hound right here in the middle, and then a Fang on the right tower to defend. You will see that I put my 3 crawlers fully symmetrical. The reason for this is because I'm planning to play Fire, right? So crawlers have a tendency to just, well, they're very fast, so they might run into the fire. That's why the crawlers that I do have, I like putting all the way in the back, because after I think 8 seconds, the Hound fire will be extinguished, and then the crawlers can kind of walk in somewhat safely. But this comp will mainly be using Fangs. Although you will see that you don't need to buy a lot of chaff when you're playing this, because that's the nice thing about Hounds. They kind of double down as chaff as well. And there's not much your opponent can do about that. They're kind of too small to get hacked. So, you know, they're going to need chaff clear anyway. And that's, I think, what's so powerful about these little guys. You know, you have the threat of fire. Your opponent might have to grab missile interception, but they also have to, you know, clear your hounds. And the hounds themselves are pretty decent chaff clear, even without techs. And so, you know, when you add something like a mountain, which can somewhat chaff clear for itself as well, you're really in a pretty good spot. Round number 3, we get not the most exciting cards. Haste module here gets picked up for Kono. I'm not really interested because this is the round I'm going to try and keep as much money available as possible, right? So next round, I'm going to need 1150 at bare minimum because that is what the unlock costs plus a mountain if I'm not a giant spec. So this means that because you're getting 800, you're going to at least need 300 in the bank, and then you can skip right on round number 4, and you will have 1150. You can keep a little bit more, of course, if you want to get the second deployment in, or you can plan to sell something on your board. Here, I decided to level up a steel ball. I was kind of planning to sell that down the line, but I mean, just look at this Houndfire, right? It is just so annoying for the opponent to deal with, and there's really nothing much they can do except try to intercept it, right? Sometimes people will try and click Sprinkler, but Sprinkler hasn't been that popular lately on Hounds. So yeah, it really doesn't leave people with a lot, and that's the nice thing, I guess, about this forceful line is you know what your opponent is gonna do, because if they don't do it, this happens, and they have no chaff clear, and even though I kept, I think, 400 in the bank there, I still end up winning the round convincingly. And now I can buy a mountain, which is going to cause another problem, and my opponent is still dealing with problems from round 2 that I created. Now here we go. There is an orbital javelin here, and I was thinking to myself, you know, round 4 javelin, I do like a lot. It's just such a good spell. It really has, in my opinion, too low a cooldown. And if I can get this back on round 8, that's just worth picking up. And honestly, I can afford to, right? Because I'm a Typhoon specialist. I can sell the Steel Ball, I can sell the Typhoon, and I'll go up to 1500 resources. That's still enough to unlock a mountain, buy a mountain, and still be able to buy, let's say, something like a Fang. And I could see that I could probably hit both of these spiders, and I can. I guess that's what 4,000 hours of Mechabellum will do to you. You just naturally know the spacing. Yeah, I thought, well, more tempo is always good. You know, my opponent is in a lot of trouble here. They are just, it seems, one step behind, and that's just what this comp sometimes can do if you get a good start. So here's the mountain. I sell my Typhoon. I wasn't too interested in pushing on the right side because I kind of expected my opponent to put a spider there because I went for a crawler play last round, and yeah, I'm not really interested in pushing there. I'm just going to stall, and I'm going to focus on that left side. We killed 2 spiders at round start. That is more than enough value for me from that spell. And my opponent does go for Missile Intercept Mustang. But now they've bought Mustang, and Mustang doesn't really help that much, right? I mean, it's nice chaff and all that, but it's not DPS, and it's definitely not going to do anything about this mountain with 140,000 hit points that just showed up. So they're getting overwhelmed, and they're having to use these deployments for units that don't really help with anything other than, well, you know, intercepting the fire. But we kind of trade there, and I think I get the better end of the deal because his missile intercept units cost 200, and my fire units cost 100. Yeah, and you can see that we still end up winning in the end. I mean, you're kind of supposed to here because it's rare that your opponent will have enough DPS on the board to kill a mountain on round 4. But you can see that we're just slowly chipping away at the opponent here. And, well, I was expecting an Abyss at this point. A lot of people like to go Abyss. Abyss is kind of the anti-Titan Titan, but as you will see, it's not that straightforward with Mountain. You would be surprised if you haven't played this unit how good it is at killing air units with anti-aircraft ammunition. And we might get to see some of that. Now, of course, more spells show up. I mean, hey, if it's in the game and it shows up this early, don't mind if I do. I'm in such a good spot here. I've won the entire early game that I can afford to pick these things. And if somehow my opponent starts stabilizing here, well, I can just, you know, get the spells back and then you know, round 8 and round 9, we're going to get Javelin into Ion Blast. These two spells, just in general, 3-round cooldown, they're so good if you get them early. I really do recommend you pick them up, specifically if your opponent is, you know, nicely lined up as my opponent is here. And after picking that, I can still sell a Steel Ball, level a Phoenix. That at least gives me some anti-air because I kind of expected this Abyss. I could put a Mountain on the right side of the board because I put a Crawler there. So I'm now creating multiple problems yet again, right? I have this Ion Beam. Now I will say this has been aimed extremely poorly by me. I get a shield, I guess, but I'm not too proud of this one. At the very least, I get a Spider there at the end as a bit of a condolence prize. But, yeah, not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. And the thing still is, I had another, you know, thing on the right side. A Mountain going to the tower. 9 seconds of debuff. And even though I used an Ion Beam that wasn't perfect, the 2 Phoenixes that I have at level 2 are more than enough to take down that Air Titan. And so we win another round. With 2 Mountains alive, that's over 1,000 damage already. And here we are at round 6. We're just in the mid game, and my opponent is already down to 1,400. And this comp skills better than just this, right? These are unteched Mountains. I can still do a bit more. And now I was sitting there like, well, I can be even more annoying. And this is something you can do when you play Titans, because you can just sell them and then buy them elsewhere. And because Titans just are so stat heavy, they really create massive problems where they are on the board, right? Like it's a big presence. And here I thought to myself, well, I had a Mountain on the right side. It's very likely he's going to put an Abyss there because he has to respect it, right? Especially with a Crawler in front. I could keep it there. And so let's try and find another, you know, hole in the opponent's defenses to abuse. And that's what we do. I sell my Mountain, I buy another one in the middle here, try to immediately target this Spider to get rid of enemy chaff clear, and use oil. Because when you put your hounds on the line like this, some of the fire will get through typically. It's quite hard to intercept all of the missiles, especially if your opponent has chaff on the line, because the missiles just don't travel very far, and so the Mustangs don't have a lot of time to catch them. And yeah, you only need 1 missile to land to set all of this on fire. And then I can just beacon this Mountain in on the diagonal. And again, right, try to avoid the abysses. I knew one was here. I kind of knew this one would show up. And yeah, we just keep pressuring here. And we click anti-aircraft ammunition. If you don't have any other anti-air on the board when you play Mountain, this is perfectly acceptable. And you will see it still has a lot of DPS. This unit has a ridiculous amount of stats. It's not just tanky. It has really, really high attack value. And the fact that, you know, it has 4 guns that each shoot every 2 seconds means that even when you reduce its attack by 40%, it's gonna kill pretty much anything in front of it anyway. And Abysses aren't the most tanky. They're kind of tanky, at 85,000 hit points, but I mean, just look at that, right? That doesn't survive very long. Granted, there was the Tara debuff, so they were taking more damage as well, but Mountains really can fight back against Abyss. It's not really the case with War Factory, but Mountain definitely can fight back and even win. So yeah, you can see here, Abyss is locked on, and the Mountain just convincingly wins. Round number 7, opponent is down to 330 hit points, and now all I have to do is find, you know, the winning play. Like, what can I do here to solidify my board? The unit drops here were not amazing. I mean, I knew the unit drops would show up, and I kind of want to sell this Mountain, but I don't want to use any of the other units. So that's, I guess, a little bit annoying for me. But it is what it is. I'm going to pick the Scorpions here. They're going to be worth the most. I think from now on, I'm just going to try and play Mountains and place them somewhere. I don't want to sell them immediately. So in the future rounds, if there are going to be any future rounds, I would sell my Scorpions, and for now I can keep them here. So one all the way in the top right corner to eventually get a debuff, and one here on the left to perhaps like get a lock on, maybe kill a Spider. That would be enough for me. I sell my Mountain because, again, this Abyss is very expected. And I just put my Mountains on the left side here. I also grab a Mountain level. This is kind of important to do. And I was considering here to go for Sledgehammers. That is a very good counter against Abyss. Regen sledges, especially even Regen and Link, is very, very hard for an Abyss to kill. But I was looking at this right side of the board, and I thought to myself, can't I just, like, kill this Abyss instantly? I could just missile that Crawler in front, and then, you know, just walk in. So that's exactly what I do instead. I put a Crawler here on the flank to make sure the Abyss doesn't immediately fight back. I put a Missile Interceptor to hopefully intercept a missile from the opponent, because he has been missiling that front Crawler. And, well, with our missile, and I put 2 there, because otherwise the Mustangs might have intercepted 1. And, yeah. I mean, just have a look at that, right? It's simply gone. Deleted from the board. And I now have a Scorpion walking into that tower as well. The left side is struggling somewhat, granted. But I may just be able to win this, especially with the debuff there going through. The right side has now won. Now I do have to walk over. I thankfully have temp speed and temp range. We're going to have to see how long this mountain can hold on. And while the Abyss has walked up too far, and it's going to get taken out there by that mountain, the other one now locks on 2. And that will simply be game. So, yeah. This was a pretty dominant round. I have a second replay queued up for you guys that was a bit closer. But I think what I wanted to do here is kind of show you guys the setup and also the power of this type of play, because this will happen relatively often where you can just make plays on the other side. And because a Titan is just a single unit, just worth a lot of resources, you can sell it and then buy it elsewhere, right? And it's basically the biggest part of your composition. So wherever the mountain is where your team is. Yeah, rough game here for my opponent, but it showcases how powerful this can be. And really, you don't need a lot of chaff. As I said, I started with 3 crawlers. I bought, you know, 2 more fangs. I have 2 crawlers here on the flanks as well. I guess I have a 4th on the line. But you don't need to buy too many, because every single hound pack doubles down as chaff as well. Let's move on to that second replay and show you guys, you know, again, the setup in a bit of a different situation. All right, here we are, game number 2 against NKB, who is going to go for a Sabertooth opener with crawlers. And as for myself, well, there is a Sabertooth opener there as well with hounds. Now, I'm not specifically looking for the sabers here, but I was trying to force this mountain line, and starting with hounds is just nice because I immediately have one of the core components that I like to use. So that's what I'm going to go for. We're a Sabertooth specialist as well, so, you know, I'll get 200 extra resources on round 3, and that will help me to get the resources I need to then buy a mountain on round 4. Round number 1 here, and I was kind of expecting him to push on that right side because, well, there is the magnetic barricade, but I didn't really want to chance it this time. So here you see a version of a game where I go for a symmetrical layout, and I have the sabers here on the insides of the tower, and the hounds are going to be behind. Now, I didn't really feel like putting a hound in the middle, even though that would be symmetrical. I would rather have them on the outskirts, and yeah, I think that just gives better, basically, fire positioning, because it's rare for people to put stuff in the middle here when they're playing aggressive, so that middle hound wouldn't really be doing too much. That's why I'm kind of gambling here on that right side. So, yeah, you could see NKB was thinking about pushing on the left, eventually decides to go on the right. That's good for me. I did, you know, put 2 hounds over here. I will likely end up losing, but maybe we can take out, you know, at least 1 saber and save ourselves some hit points. My big cannon has locked on, but it can't quite finish the job. 1 more round in the chamber would have done the trick, but the Sabertooth manages to kill it right before that happens. And now I'm not too sure if we're going to be able to kill anything. Pretty bad debuff timer for us there. My saber got pulled towards the middle. We didn't get a tower debuff, and it's a crushing round 1 here for the Saber Hound player. Kind of expected though. It's very hard for you to win on round 1 if you're playing a symmetrical defense and kind of hedging both sides. But again, round number 2, we do have the threat of Houndfire. Now, this is an opponent that does run Fire Extinguisher. And I had seen this, but to be honest, I don't really care. If I can make the opponent click Fire Extinguisher, that's fine by me. because, you know, it makes it all the more difficult for them to go for something like range or chamber compression or mech rage, and they'll have to look for a different chaff gear unit, basically. So round number 2 here, we don't get any unit reinforcements. I don't really care about any of this. And if I skip, I can buy myself a Phoenix. I can sell one of my buildings. I have sold the other building on round 1 here, the middle one, because it tends to not be that useful. And that gives me enough money to once again go for Houndfire as well as an air unit. Very common play. As you guys will know by now, this round 2 Phoenix, it is just very powerful. And you can see the power of the fire play, right? Everything has burned to a crisp except those sabers, and now they're very vulnerable, and I will be able to immediately stabilize, even though half of my army is still doing nothing, right? It's just killing, I think, one Fang Pack, and then that's it. Or a Crawler and a Hound, I guess, but that's not really worth the amount of deployments there. Round number 3, we get a bunch of interesting items. I was interested in buying some of this. I was planning to buy or to sell one of my sabers here, probably sell this left one, add the one I get from my specialist on the right side for a round, and then I'll sell that next round to replace it with a mountain. Like, this is where my mountain will go. And because I'm playing mountain, improved firepower wasn't that interesting to me. I could throw it on a Phoenix, but I kind of rather would have electromagnetic impact. And on top of that, I thought, well, if he's gonna click sprinkler here, I might be able to get another round with the fire, because I can turn off the sprinkling tech and, you know, still land my fire bombs. So that was the plan here. And EMP is just a really good spell this early on. 2-round cooldown. You will see it multiple times, and it's annoying for the opponent to deal with. I will say I like what NKB does here. He's a Fire Badger specialist. Doesn't want to go for Fire Badgers as his main chaff clear, which I can understand. It's not the best unit right now. So just uses this aggressively on this left flank. And I go for an aggressive play as well with my hounds here in the corner. Just to basically like pull his army apart, like kill his chaff. Perhaps like allow me to push in on this left turret at some point. And that's pretty much the round. But what I like that NKB does is he clicks Sprinkler, realizes, okay, I'm not going to have the money to go for Hound as my main chaff clear, so let me go for a Wraith instead. And with improved firepower control system, that's a very solid play. So I do like that. Now, we managed to land our EMP, and therefore there is no fire extinguisher, so this round is very much the same as last round, where, you know, all of the chaff just ends up burning to a crisp. Hopefully I can take down this Wraith. It seems like a couple of crawlers have made their way through, and my sabers are dying, but thankfully I have one Fang Pack that arrives late. I think I should be able to get a victory here. Oh, I say that. The Fire Badger play from my opponent works out very nicely for them, and there's not quite enough Fangs in the way for me to be able to win, so I will actually lose round number 3, but I'm pretty happy here about this round overall. I think it was fine. Keep in mind I did, you know, keep a bunch of resources in my bank since I am planning to buy that mountain. And so the round being very close in spite of that is a good sign for me. Because you can see here, my opponent has 800. I have 1200 thanks to, you know, keeping 400 in the bank. And we have unit reinforcements. And I get to sell this Sabertooth, which we planned for. Now, nothing here really catches my eye. I don't need Stormcallers. I could buy them, but I kind of like the Phantom Ray because, as I said before, I was setting up a bit of an aggressive play, or at least an aggressive optional play on this left side by pulling these crawlers, perhaps, you know, making my opponent invest in another unit to kill these hounds. And Phantom Ray is just such a good unit to push with. It's a very common thing to grab it from a unit drop in these asymmetrical games, pop a crawler in front, and just beacon it to tower. It's annoying to deal with for a lot of boards. So yeah, that was the play moving forward. I sell my Saber, as I mentioned before, and I go for the Mountain here. Doesn't need any techs right away, and honestly, in these type of defensive situations, Mountain just tends to do well, you know, for a lot of rounds before it really needs a tech. And the techs you would consider here are something like Saturation Bombardment, if you really need the bonus DPS, and I guess a little bit of extra chaff clear, or range, right, if the other things are kind of covered, like you have enough DPS and you're happy with your chaff clear, but you feel like you need a bit more safety for your mountain because your opponent might be playing something like a melting point. And then aerials or anti-aircraft ammunition is in those cases where your opponent buys an abyss. Fire here will land another hound on the shallow flank with sprinkler. Left side should be able to get in. My hounds have managed to kill the crawlers. And I will say I accidentally forgot to do anything about the fire badger. I knew it was there, but I just completely zoned out dealing with it. But it doesn't really matter because I get in quicker anyway on the left side. And that will allow my mounted to hopefully take down all of the remainder of the units. I will get debuffed, which is not amazing. And my opponent does have 2 phoenixes here that are blue. Might just be enough damage, actually, to get rid of everything. In fact, it is. I will get the debuff and win the round, but a little bit sloppy by me there. If I just defended that fire badger, we would have won more convincingly and dealt an additional 500 damage because our mountain would have been alive. But still, we managed to win. We created some problems that our opponent has to answer. And because they have to answer with their own deployments on the left side, you know, it makes it a bit easier probably for my mountain to do stuff on the right because they don't have infinite deployments. So they won't be able to just, you know, put all of their deployments on that right side of the board. So they buy a crawler here. There was already a wraith from last round. Phoenix goes behind, so 2 deployments to deal with this phantom that I got for free. I decided to buy the nano repair kit from the store, and I throw it on my level 3 phantom rays. I do go for a missile. I go for a hound behind just in case, but I was expecting a crawler up front, and these phantom rays should be able to beat that either way. And if they do, again, it'll prompt my opponent to do something, right? Could be just tower levels, but they'll have to do something. I decided to range my hounds in this case because I had the money, and I felt like the mountain by itself should still be enough to get rid of these level 1 fortresses, as long as I can just, you know, clear the way. So I go for attack 1, that way I should be able to one-shot the enemy crawlers. And yeah, now I have like the double threat, right? I got the fire first, but now the hounds can clear even without it. And you can see some of the fire ends up landing for a little bit anyway, and just softens up the crawlers, which is nice. I will say the ranged fortresses that my opponent went for here are doing a really good job. Thankfully, I get the debuff quick on that left side, and I went for a phantom ray, by the way, to get rid of those badgers. But it seems like we still kind of get stuck on the chaff here a tiny bit. The nice thing about Mountain is that even if you seem to get stuck on chaff somewhat, that tends to be fine just because of how tanky the unit is. It can tank most units for a while before it goes down, and because it can tank, it also buys you time to get rid of the chaff. Left side here doing really, really well, and pretty happy about the situation. At this point, I would consider buying a second Mountain just for the additional DPS, and then either Saturation Bombardment or Range, I think, would be acceptable. We do get unit reinforcements. Farseer shows up, and I felt like that was the best thing for me to pick up. NKB goes for the same thing. I was a bit afraid. I was expecting, you know, some type of tech to come out on the Wraith at some point, because there are 2 of them on the board right now, and there's no real chaff clear from my opponents outside of those. So just grabbing the Farseers will help me have anti-air, and if there is a situation where my opponent does end up buying something like an Abyss, at least I will have, you know, some air units on the board already. I do go for a Phoenix level here as well, because it's been doing great. I go for the EMP, which is now back off cooldown. And left side, I add a Farseer. I go for the same missile. And that is going to be all she wrote. We do see another Wraith pop up. And we might even see a tech. Also go for oil. I thought, well, I might just go for oil. It will likely get set on fire. And if my opponent ends up shielding, which, you know, they probably will. But in case they don't, I might be able to get rid of the sprinkler and then land this oil. You get range on the Farseer, or on the Wraith, but thankfully I have the Farseer right now already available to click AA on next turn and counter the enemy Wraith. And I will say the left side is just under-defended right now. I even preemptively go for aerial specialization. I think this is fine to do in a lot of cases if your opponent has a bunch of air units, because Farseer doesn't really need many more techs, and aerial specialization is just so cheap that, you know, in the scenario where your opponent does invest in air, it's such a powerful tech to immediately have. Left side, we do win, and the Nano Repair is honestly doing a good job here of stalling that Farseer. The right side is struggling a little bit, and I could for sure use another mountain, if not a mountain level, but I still have a big part of my army on the left here, which, you know, we shouldn't forget about. Even though I am losing the right, the left side is basically as many resources as my right side defense. So we're now moving in to get that debuff. The Phantom Rays are coming in, and there's no anti-air left at this point, really. There's one level 1 Wraith, but that's not going to be enough. The Phantom Rays will clean up. Not the biggest win, but again, you try to get towards, you know, the end of the mid-game, kind of the beginning of the late game with this comp, because that's where you'll have the money to buy more mountains, get the techs, get the level ups. Round number 7, Electromagnetic Impact shows up again, alongside some other interesting spells. Rhino Assault, Mobilize Battleship, something that you could definitely consider, but I was pretty happy to just grab that Electromagnetic Impact. Tends to be very good against these type of Wraith-based boards, because it's going to be difficult for them to photon that, if not impossible. Because I doubt you would just buy an Overlord here. So, you know, I can guarantee the EMP, and that way we have a lot of EMPs lined up for the rest of the game. I also go for Saturation Bombardment here. I wanted to try out that tech. I felt like I was lacking perhaps a bit of DPS to deal with the fortresses, as well as a bit of chaff clear, and Saturation tends to help with that. So instead of going for range, I went for that. And it also kind of showcases, I guess, you know, a bit of a different tech line rather than just grabbing range. EMP I'm using on the left side, as I wanted to try and get in. I will say my opponent probably should put this over the crawlers, but I guess they hadn't spaced for it, so they couldn't really fit the fortress in a good spot. But yeah, letting this crawler get missiled is really not gonna be that good for them. I do forget to shield myself. Again, not my cleanest game, you know, between not dealing with the Badger and not shielding the EMP. But at the same time, it doesn't matter that much if you get EMP'd here. Most of your units don't care. Like Saturation, of course, is nice to have, and you can see that it's doing a good job on this left side, but losing it doesn't hurt that much. Like, the Mountain is still going to do well regardless. Same with the Hounds, right? They can lose their techs, but they'll tend to just fire their rocket missiles anyway before they get EMP'd. And yeah, you can see that now suddenly the right side is winning. The left side is still a big problem naturally, but that's kind of how you have to play these games. Try to pull away the enemy from just being able to, you know, dump all of their deployments on that right side. Round number 8, we get more unit reinforcements. I'm not too interested in anything here. The Scorpion is fine, but it's not the most resources because it's, you know, you have to pay 300 for it. I could take the Typhoons, but I would have to sell them across 2 rounds. So instead I'll just decide to go for Void Eyes here to go for an electromagnetic armor play, which isn't necessarily against the fortresses, although it does help, but it's mainly to just annoy these Wraith, right? If I can get rid of their range, they'll move up further, and that'll probably allow the Farseer to take them down a bit more rapidly. I should buy another Farseer here on the left to try and target this Wraith, but other than that, my board is mainly done. I could go for another Mountain as well here on the left, but for now I was pretty happy about how my Phantom Rays were doing, and keep in mind I have no investment in this unit. It's level 5 with a Nano Repair, but there's no techs on it, so the moment it does get countered, which might be this round, considering NKB decides to go for AA Farseer, I can sell it and then use the money to, you know, buy more Mountains. Do go for another Farseer. We go for another Hound, I think, here on the left. Or we already bought that last round. Temp range, temp speed has been picked up, round number 8, so I am loaning. Opponent is down to 29 hit points. Very nearly ended last round, but not quite. And let's see how this goes. Again, I keep missiling that crawler on the left because so far it's been allowing me to take down that Wraith, and again, we will manage to. And you can see here the Wraith do get EMP'd. As a result, they move up, and one of them already has gone down. This Farseer should very soon start locking on as well. It does. And I will say the opponent was kind of surprising me here with the amount of DPS that was coming from their fortresses. I'll although my mountain is fighting back. The thing is, the moment you manage to get a level, it's just such an insane increase in stats that it often just completely overthrows a matchup that you'd be losing before. Although this time, we don't manage to win, and I get debuffed, so my mountain does end up losing. Round number 9, nothing interesting here. I can't put these items on my titans, so I was just mainly considering selling. Or selling, rather, skipping, using the money and then selling this Phantom Ray, as I mentioned. I do have that Nano Repair Kit available. I could throw it on, I guess, this Phantom Ray in the back, or one of my Farseers. It's not the best target for it, but I don't really have a good target for it anyway now. And with 2100 resources in the bank, a level up here on the mountain and maybe a level 2 mountain on the left should do the trick. Yeah, that's exactly what we go for. Like, just getting basically a second mountain worth of stats when you level from level 1 to level 2 makes a massive difference. And even though the fortresses have been fighting back valiantly, they're not supposed to win this matchup, right? Because mountain is basically just a bigger, better fortress with more stats in every single aspect. Yeah, left side now. We should be able to overwhelm, I think, now that we've replaced that Phantom. We also have, of course, basically a useless tech on the enemy Farseers, which we managed to bait out thanks to that Phantom drop. And I think we should be favored. Do get the EMP as well. I'm just trying to hit this one level 2 Wraith, as it is the strongest. And I also get to do a bit of extra damage to these barriers that were purchased by my opponent. Temp speed, temp range. I put the Nano Repair on my Phantom Ray and leveled it. You don't have to here. I don't think it's probably not even correct, to be honest, but I had the money, and that's kind of what matters. Opponent does have that Steel Ball spawn item, and well, he's doing a pretty good job, honestly, at clearing the left side. This mountain looks like it will be going down, but the right side is doing very well, as I have added, you know, another level 2 mountain now, and you can see that it makes all the difference as you do manage to win. Of course, we had the EMP too, but that's why you pick those spells early, so they rotate back and you get a little bit of a advantage, at least in that regard, during future rounds. And now we just have to watch as these mountains finish the job with the saturation bombardment. If this goes longer, I would probably grab range enhancement. The steel balls actually do manage to take down an additional mountain, but yeah, this matchup should just be losing long term. Normally speaking, there is no way that fortresses should be able to beat mountain, and this game is no exception. Now, this game was a little bit tougher, right? We weren't quite able to be as dominant as that first game, but again, it shows you a very similar setup where you use those hounds early, you put some of them here on the line in the first couple of rounds, just to guarantee that the fire lands in good spots. And yeah, apart from that, you use something like a Phoenix, whatever anti-air you may find, and then go for the mountain. Use the unit drops in ways that you think are useful. Sometimes selling is the best, but getting some anti-air is not bad in this case. And yeah, most of the chaff will just be fangs so that they don't run into your own fire. You can always range the hounds as well if you want to, as I showed this game. And let's just briefly take over for NKB on this final round. What you should do against this is, I think, not go for Fortress, even though it looked alright for a bit. It's just not a unit that's meant to kill Mountain. In these type of closer range scenarios, I think Melting Point should do the trick. It's still, risky, but it's probably better than Abyss. If the game goes long and your opponent already clicked a tech like this, you can still go for an Abyss, especially level 2 if you have the money. So let's say that we do this. There's this Saber over here that I think we can just sell, because that's not going to do anything. Temp range, temp speed, kind of important. And we're probably just buying an Abyss here, I imagine. There we go. And I think I want to pressure this right side. Now, of course, there was a mountain that was put here, so it's perhaps a little bit of hindsight, but I think this is the best you can do, because here there's just no space. So you would have to put it like over here, but I don't really like that. I think this is the best. We can also missile this Crawler and that Void Eye, and then this should probably be enough. We'll have to see. The thing is, I have AA Farseers on my board, but level 1 AA Farseer, especially if it's by itself, just does not tend to be enough. And level 2 Abyss, it's going to be quite difficult to take out. So perhaps with this, he would have been able to buy himself an additional round. Right side does look good. Left side, doing fine. At least the fortresses have managed to lock on. And if I get a debuff here, perhaps this can take down one of the mountains. It does, and it's the left one, which is very nice, because the right one will now get targeted by the Abyss. So there was a round win here that it could have had. It wouldn't have won the game with it, because I think I had plenty of hit points remaining. But, well, actually, it's a pretty big round. 2100 damage. Perhaps could have been enough. Watch the replay. It would have been enough to kill, in fact. Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, it does require, I guess, a little bit of a ballsy play. And it's also because I did put a mountain there. And that ends up working. But in this case, Abyss does function as a gut shot. Again, I wouldn't bind Abyss very early, typically, into something like a mountain. But late, it can work, especially at level 2. This is different when it's extended range mountain, by the way. Into extended range mountain, I would bind Abyss, because then the attack is just so low that they can't afford to click anti-aircraft ammunition. But into regular mountain, especially untech'd, and if your opponent runs anti-aircraft ammunition, buying an Abyss early tends to not go that well. You'd be better off buying something like a melting point. Or, I guess, ionized Raiden, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. Some people do like it, though. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about these games. Have you been playing Mountain or facing it? What do you think about the unit? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.